Hey, this is Appalachian Driven. This is our first video, and we're going to be reviewing a 200,000 mile BMW. This is a 5 Series. It's actually a 528i, and which most engines that come in the 528i are 4 cylinders with turbos. This actually has an inline 6 N52 engine. So we're going to be talking about the pros and cons, and we're also going to be talking about, is this car still a money hazard? Should we ditch it or should we keep it? So to start off, we're going to talk about the maintenance cost on the car. So other than just doing proper maintenance, the only major money we've had to spend is just on ignition cools and spark plugs, which in BMWs, that's, they're known for eating spark plugs and ignition cools. Other than that, everything's been actually very solid, keeping oil changes and changing brake pads. It's all been, a very good car. So there is some modifications done. There's no engine modifications, but there are some brake modifications and wheel modifications, as you can see. So the wheels are 19-inch wheels, and they're actually forged ESR. And I would recommend you go with 18 or 19-inch wheels like these and stay away from the 20-inch, since this car is a heavy car. You're going to be more likely to bust a rim since there's not much, cushion on your tire. So I'm going to mention some pros and some cons that I like about the car. So with it coming with an N52, it actually only has 230 horsepower, which is honestly not much for a typical BMW. It's pretty slow, especially it being a 5 Series and it weighs 3,800 pounds. And that's one con that I don't like about it. Now, if this was an inline 6 with 300 horsepower, this thing would be a totally different beast. Another thing I'm going to talk about is how it handles in curves. Now, this car is kind of frowned upon in the car community for going around curves because it is a heavy car. But I've actually had it for 6 years, and I'm going to say otherwise. It actually does very, very good in corners, and that's something we'll talk about later on when I drive the car. So one of the pros that I like about the car is how spacious it is. From it being a 5 Series and comparing it to a 4 or 3 Series, this actually has as much room as you want. You can lean back and relax going down the interstate, or you can, set your seat up and make it a racing cockpit when you're hitting some curves. Another con that I don't like about it is where it's an inline 6, it doesn't have any turbo, so the gas mileage sucks. So this car gets it roughly about 17.5 miles per gallon. And it could probably be a little better since there are heavier wheels on it. So now we're moving to the back. So as you can tell, there are some modifications on this car, seeing that it actually has a M Sport bumper on the back of it, which, seeing that this was my car, I changed it. I love the way that the back end of a M5 looks. So we're going to talk about why this car can handle so good. And for one, it's actually on H&R suspension, and it's been dropped a little bit and on a lot stiffer suspension. And the tire size on this car actually helps a lot, seeing that on the back it actually has 285 by 40. And this really helps it out, seeing you have more rubber on the road. So moving on to the exhaust, it's just a simple muffler delete, and it actually sounds good. It gets the crackles. Everybody likes the crackles that come with BMW. Now we're moving on the inside of the car. Now, for 2011, this comes with everything that you could possibly want. It has Bluetooth, it has navigation, it has, telephone, it has literally everything that you want in a car. Some cons that I have with it is, well, for one, it doesn't have paddles, and paddles is a really big thing when you are driving, curvy roads. You want to always keep your hands on the steering wheel. And that's one big con that I have. But since I've had this car for 6 years, I've gotten really used to the slap shift from shifting down here. Now, another thing that you might notice, that the trim in this car has actually been changed. It actually has suede or Alcantara or whatever you want to call it, and I think it adds a really nice touch on, a 12-year-old car. It kind of makes it a little more modern when you're comparing it to newer BMWs. Now, seeing, you know, the inside, it's been maintained about as good as you would want to keep it, seeing that, you know, it has 200,000 miles on it. You know, the car's not going to be perfect. It's going to get wear from touching buttons and touching that. So other than that, it's been, I would say that the inside of the car is, you know, very, very modern for it being a 12-year-old car when comparing it to an American car. So you're probably wondering how much we paid for the car. So we paid $15,700 for the car, and it had roughly about 67,000 miles on it when we got it. And today, currently, it has 199,156 miles on it, which is, you know, quite impressive for it to be a BMW. And one thing to take note of is, for a first car for a younger kid, this is an excellent car. It's an M52, it's an inline-six engine. It's very reliable, and it also doesn't have as much power, so it can't get away from him. So, you know, that's definitely something to take note of a first car. Now diving into the car, we're gonna do like a little kind of a drive, you know, see how it feels and stuff. So it handles really good around the corners, as you can tell. You know, these are, you know, hairpins. These are, you know, pretty steep corners, and you can really throw it into the corner if you can get this car set up right, seeing, you know, the modifications that are done to it. And another thing to note is the transmission really holds the car back, and you really don't have to stay in the brakes as much. You can kind of just honestly stay in the gas the whole time and just get into it and let it eat coming out of a corner. And saying that it doesn't have, you know, as much horsepower, it'll actually, you'd be surprised at what you can keep up with when you're in these mountains, because a lot of people, they think, you know, they have to have all this horsepower to be able to run through these roads and keep up with this and keep up with that. Seeing that it doesn't have a lot of horsepower, you don't have to worry about it, you know, spinning out on it. You can just rip it through it. And we'll get into that when we're coming up it. I don't like going too fast down the mountains. I don't, because, you know, I don't want my brakes to be too hot, and you know, I don't want to end up over the edge. So the ride of the car, this road's pretty rough, and even though it has stiff suspension on it, it's really not that bad. It's still really smooth. The body roll on it is kept to a minimum about it, and you're not sliding everywhere. And these ain't even, you know, the sport racing seats, and you can tell, I mean, we're going pretty quick, and we're not sliding around or nothing. You know, we're just going into these curves. So the feel of the car, the steering wheel, it's really adaptive when it comes to smooth transitions, you know, going from a right-hand turn back into a left-hand turn. It goes really smooth, and that's another thing that is just awesome about BMW as well. See, with it having minimum power, you can see, like, I just floored it right there, and it just got right out of that curve really quick. And with it being naturally aspirated and no turbos, it's just, I think it's a really good advantage, and definitely a really good starter car when you're looking to get into driving in the mountains and stuff. You know, it makes you feel a lot more safer than trying to hold back, you know, a 400 to 500 horsepower car. You just can't do it. So now we're going to go back up, and you'll really be able to tell how good it'll come out of a corner without it sliding. It's awesome. It's a different type of driving for sure.